The Haiku story starts back in 1990. Former Apple executive Jean-Louis Gasset started B Incorporated with the goal of developing a modern object-oriented operating system written in C++, made possible by investment from Seymour Cray, the very same Seymour Cray, the creator of the Cray supercomputer. Other noteworthy employees included former Apple executive Steve Salkamon and former Apple engineer Eric Ringwald, who would join as CTO. B Inc. would also use Apple's strategy, an OS designed specifically for proprietary hardware. The result was BeOS, and in 1995, the BeBox workstation was released as an Apple competitor specifically for digital media work. It included a unique high-performance microkernel designed for preemptive, parallel, multi-threaded workloads with multi-CPU systems. Each application window would run its own thread, and both models used dual PowerPC 603 processors. The BeBox featured an extensive input-output system and proprietary geek port aimed at engineers and developers, and despite its cutting-edge hardware and OS capabilities, it failed to achieve commercial success. Eventually, BeOS was modified to run on Apple's PowerPC computers, probably an attempt to incentivize Apple into acquiring B Inc., and it may have almost been successful because Apple considered purchasing B to use as a successor to their outdated classic Mac OS, but instead ended up purchasing Next. The company was eventually acquired by Palm Inc. in 2001. That same year, development began on Haiku with the intent of creating an open source system backwards compatible with existing BeOS software. Former B Inc. engineer Travis Geiselbrecht had created a similar kernel for his own project called NewOS, abandoning the microkernel for a monolithic kernel with dynamically loaded modules. Where there's a kernel, there's a way. Because Haiku remains backwards compatible with BeOS, it requires the Haiku team to maintain their own hybrid fork of GCC 2 and 7, and it supports being built as a hybrid GCC 7 and 2 environment. What's going on, everyone? I'm Jay, and I make things with computers, stuff like music, graphics, mostly just videos about computers. Speaking of creators, if you liked that Haiku History intro, hit that like button down below, and if you're a real G, you can subscribe too. It's free, and it would really mean a lot to me. I never got to try out BeOS. I've played with a few Haiku releases over the years. I think all the way back to the second alpha release. This past December, we got the Beta 4 that is, by all accounts, a landmark release. I cover the installation process and also fixing the missing audio mixer issue with VMware. Since this video got a little bit long, I'll have the sections all timestamped in the description below. So let's jump right in, shall we? And we are gonna start booting this up in VMware using the 64-bit version. Normally I would just kind of skip the install, but Haiku's process is very different from Linux and slightly counterintuitive. Start off, set up partitions. I've got a 20 gig hard drive. We're gonna wanna select that. Go up to disk and initialize. I'm gonna use GUID partition table, write changes. Now we're gonna go ahead and click that empty space, and we're gonna create a partition. I'm gonna use the whole thing, and we're gonna use B file system. We're gonna right click it again. We're gonna go to format it as B file system and make sure we have enable query support. Format write changes. And lastly, I'm going to go up to partition and mount. And then we have to go select it for the onto target, and we can begin our installation. And I'm just going to let it go because it installs so fast, and that's a common theme with Haiku, is just how fast the OS itself is. We can go ahead and restart. We're going to start off, we're going to go to preferences and screen, and we're going to make this resolution 1920 by 1080. The Haiku logo was obscured with the other resolution. Let's also look at backgrounds. So you can adjust the color of the background, and they only include this one image, and you can move it around on the display here. This is called the Deskbar. It's essentially like the dock or the start button. You know, you got your shutdown. There's some preferences here where we can increase the icon size, auto hide, auto raise, and set it to be always on top. But yeah, basic stuff. We've got mount, find, and applications, demos, desktop applets, and of course preferences. So increasing the font size will actually make the interface a little bit larger. There's also decorators that you can adjust. I guess you have to install other ones, and then you can adjust colors as well. This is the key map, one design choice. They use the Alt key as the control key, but if you don't like the way it's set up, you can change it in the key map. Another unique aspect from BeOS, it's a single user system. So there is no sudo or root user, but right here it mentions the password lock. This is actually the screensaver, and they have a bunch. I'm sure there's somebody watching this video right now that's like, what the hell is a screensaver? See, back in the day, we had these things called CRT or cathode ray tube displays, and they would have burn-in. But yeah, screensavers, kind of a thing of the past. We got leaves. Well, this one could give you a seizure probably. Here we've got media settings. So we've got MIDI audio settings, audio mixer, and video settings. Oh, and by the way, in VMware, there is no sound support. And I'll actually show you how to fix that in a second. Control and tab brings up the application switcher. A really cool feature that I really love is if you hold Control and Alt, you'll get these purple highlights, and if you hold your left mouse button, it'll drag the entire window around, but the right click will let you adjust, so we can adjust the window that way. It's pretty cool. If you hold Shift, you can move the tab up top here. Alt-T opens new terminals, and it has tabs for the terminal as well. However, Haiku also offers stacking and tiling, but they do it a little bit different. So if you hold the Windows key or the Super key, you overlay the top there, and that allows you to stack windows. If you hold it and come together at the end here, this is what they consider tiling windows. So I kind of love that. Pretty cool. And we have tab completion. This is a bash terminal, so most of your Linux knowledge should be helpful here. We're gonna do PKGMAN search, PKGMAN install VMware add-ons. Yes, awesome. Additionally, you can install software from the Haiku Depot, which is, as the name suggests, the app store for Haiku. There's categories for the featured package section, but I'm going to go over here to all packages, and we're going to do a search for Open Sound. Go ahead and install Open Sound, the sound driver that should get the sound working. Now I'm going to have to shut it down, open the VM directory, and we're going to edit the VMX file. And above the line sound.autodetect, we want to do sound virtual dev equals HD audio. go ahead and save that. I'm gonna boot her back up and see if we have working sound. And it did. Awesome. The Deskbar also has a tray. By default, you've got the volume, network, status, and then this cool one right here called process controller. It's got the option to quit any open application, which these are actually services or servers. Can see memory usage, threads, and CPU usage. So kernel team, you highlight that and we can see all of the individual threads. And you can turn processors on and off and enable power saving. You can open the terminal from the process controller. Also, with the Deskbar, there are tiny little handles on either side of the system tray. The one on the left allows you to adjust the width, and the one on the right allows you to drag it out. So if you want it to go across the top, or maybe you want it to go across the bottom, be more like a traditional desktop. When you open the menu, there's an option here, show replicants. And replicants are basically like widgets. Here is the volume, and this tiny little icon to the bottom right means that it can be turned into a replicant. So you left click and drag it, and you get this outline. And there we have the volume slider as a widget. We can remove it by right-clicking that same little icon and move it to wherever we want. We've also got several desktop applets, so VMware add-ons, which obviously I installed. There's the launch box, application launcher. You can make it horizontal. You can even change the size of the icons and place whatever you want into it. The process controller is itself a desktop applet, and then there's workspaces. And it even actively shows you which windows are in the workspace, and we can make it live in the Deskbar, and then we can just switch workspaces by mousing over in the Deskbar. So pretty cool. If we go down to mount, that's where all of our removable devices are. So I have a USB drive here, and go ahead and mount that. It appears here, and it even has a little indicator next to it that shows how full it is, and anything that's being copied gets a little dialog of its own, and you can pause or stop it. Here we have Tracker, and Tracker is central to the entire OS. And with Beta 4, we finally get a revolutionary feature, which is thumbnails for photographs. Obviously, I'm joking, but it is good that they got around to that. Tracker looks like Windows Explorer in a lot of ways, and every folder that you open opens as a new window. But come down to the bottom right, this is the drill down menu. And with this menu, we can navigate to whichever folder we want, and even the file specifically we want. But if we want the folder, we just click that and it opens up. However, if you don't like this multiple window setup, you can go to Preferences, Windows, and highlight Single Window Navigation, and then also Show Navigator. And now we have a back, up, and forward, making everything a lot simpler. Even the applications itself is just a location on the file system as a folder. If you come down here to add-ons, we've got text search, disk usage, and backgrounds, file type, open terminal, Zip-O-Matic. So disk usage can scan your USB drives, RAM file system. Oh, by the way, kind of an antiquated thing. Essentially, a RAM file system was a place where you could put stuff you were actively working with that you wanted high-speed access to, and it gets emptied when you turn the computer off. But it's cool to see it here. The text search can actually find a line of text in any file, but there's also the find function. This is the standard search. It's very comparable to like Apple's Finder. You can pick which volume you want to search in. It can find just about anything you're looking for. Backgrounds. This is actually a backgrounds for the tracker window itself. Kind of a strange feature, but whatever. Terminal and Zip-O-Matic, obviously for compressing files. So we have Haiku Depot. You can actually log in, and that gives you the ability to leave ratings on software. Includes screenshots and repository management, and there are other repositories out there. I haven't dealt with adding any, and it includes everything you could really want. Ratings for packages, you can browse by category. So this particular version that I'm using, the 64-bit X6486 version, and you should consider which version you're going to use because the software available is different for both. Also available in the new release of Beta 4 is GTK application support, meaning Linux apps. Qt support was already available, but this further expands the Linux software that has been and will be ported over to Haiku. And we now have Wine, the Windows compatibility layer on Haiku. Although it apparently does not currently work as well as it does on Linux. And DOSBox is another emulator that lets you run classic DOS games and software. Not to mention the BeOS Haiku native and Haiku ports. And to round out all of the features and support for Beta 4, better high DPI display support. We mentioned the thumbnails in the tracker. Support for some USB Wi-Fi devices, new Wi-Fi drivers from OpenBSD, USB RNDIS tethering support, a new NTFS driver, AVIF image support, web positive, got an up-to-date branch of WebKit, Wayland compatibility, NVMe driver improvements. And that's a lot. Lots of bug fixes, general stabilization work. And you can actually look at the differences in software online. So if you go to haiku-os.org, at the far right of this little menu, you have Haiku Depot. And from here, you can select between bSly, Fat Elk, and Haiku ports. You can also select x86 64 or GCC2, and considerably less packages available for the 64-bit version. However, I believe a lot of those are legacy BeOS software. On the 64-bit version, probably has more software that you'd be looking to use. Let's go to categories, video. 29 packages for 64-bit versus 26 32-bit. Just something to be aware of before you get started. If you've been following me for any number of time, one of my first things that I do when installing a new operating system is getting a weather app. And weather is actually perfect for that. And of course, it is a replicant, so you can just set that up wherever you want. And I love that. I think that is a beautiful widget. That's pretty awesome. Could have some more options, but beggars can't be choosers. Haiku actually has out-of-the-box playback for lots of videos formats through its media player, which has a bunch of settings, not a ton, but decent amount. It can open network streams, and you can even hide the interface, which not bad.
You been here?
There is a little bit of audio stutter that has something to do with running it as a VM. But the playback is actually very fluid.
I'm gonna find a couch, watch a movie, and drink until I pass out.
And here we can look at the individual threads and processes. All of these are running inside of the media player. These are their CPU usages.
No questions. Movie's the one with my mezcal from the party last week.
Excuse me? You mean our mezcal?
Of course, the audio files also open in the media player. Every file opens in its own instance of the media player. I haven't figured out a way to disable that yet. Haiku ships with a bunch of demos, and a lot of these I believe were also included in BeOS. So we've got chart, just a graphical illustration like a star chart. You can set it to slow rotation, slow motion, fast motion, and free motion. It also shows you the frames and the CPU load. You can turn up the star density as well and add different colors for the stars. There's also chaos, a mass, and spiral. You can also turn up the frames per second, and you can also watch the CPU load increase when doing so. It also has 2 threads or single thread, which I assume is because, it was designed at the time. Dual CPUs were about as good as it got. And over here we have the special, which are Comet or the Novas. So Novas has little stars that explode. You can see them if you look there. And with the Comet, you have to really pay attention to notice it. I'll probably have to zoom in and highlight it because it's really easy to miss. This one is called Clock. It changes style and color. It is also a replicant, so it can live on your desktop. Cortex is one of the more interesting demos. The sound connection system. We'll actually come back to this in a second. This is the font demo, which allows you to enter your own text, and you can pick a font or you can cycle fonts. Adjust the spacing, shear, and rotate them. The GL teapot, it's a 3D teapot, and you can even spin it. This is a real-time demo of OpenGL. Also shows the frame rate, and it reacts to how hard you spin and the direction you spin the teapot. Now remember, when this came out in the 90s, having a desktop running this was a pretty impressive thing. And as you can see, this one has obviously an entirely modern back end because it's using LLVM pipes. And what's really interesting is these threads even have priorities all the way up to real-time priority. It looks like it has a numeric setting for the priorities as well, real-time being 120. Haiku 3D, and it's just the Haiku logo spinning in 3 dimensions. Mandelbrot, if you're not familiar, is a mathematical graphical calculation. This one lets you play with various Mandelbrot sets: Burning Ship, Tricon, Julia, Orbit Trap, and Multibrot. And this one's using 1024 iterations. I just set it to 4096, and it's gonna take longer to draw that. If we set it to 128, it's very quick. You can also change the colors. So I just did a 8000, and you can see it's actually pulling pretty hard to draw this. This one is called Overlay Image, and it's not really in effect until you drag the replicant out. Pairs, it's a memory game. You're trying to pair all the objects up, and it counts how many clicks. So I did that in 40 clicks. It's actually kind of cool. And Patch Bay refers to MIDI patching. So I have a MIDI controller hooked up. I do not have anything to patch it into. This is Playground, and this is a demo of how color compositing in graphics works, basically. So all these modes are basic color operations, kind of like what you use when compositing. It's like in basic video compositing. There's also Sudoku, which I honestly don't know how to play. Pulse, essentially just another CPU level monitor. It has a mini mode, and it also has a Deskbar mode. Okay, so let's kind of do a little speed run of all of the applications. So another feature that I almost overlooked is the screenshot taker. This is unique because after you've taken the screenshot, the capture active window and include window border. Very unique touch. So I've opened up every app that I want to go over and divided them into various categories between workspaces. This is file types, and it shows you all of the various file types known to the system, and you can also add extra attributes. Another file related preference dialog, data translations, and data translations are Haiku's version of support for non-native file formats. Photoshop images, raw images, WebP's even in here. But in the file types, they have the edit icon. And this leads me to another important software, Iconomatic, Haiku's icon designing software. Haiku uses its own SVG files, and it shows you up here the different icon sizes. And we also have a magnifier, kind of useful for things like this. Even though it's so tiny, it retains a lot of clarity. The magnifier is pretty cool too. It's got a bunch of features. You can increase the sizes and whatnot. Every little piece of this is a brilliantly done shape and path, and obviously this is targeted at developers. We've got a full-featured PDF viewer. People, I assumed it would be like an address book, but it's actually just this new person dialog. You enter the details for the person. They just get saved in the people folder on your home folder. Not the fanciest way of doing things, but okay. And then we have mail. Strike one for Haiku because I cannot get email to work. This is technically Google's fault because Google no longer allows less secure app access to a Gmail account. For now anyway, you can't use Gmail with Haiku. At least that's my understanding. But the mail is a relatively simple system. Haiku mail daemon sends and fetches mail, and you can write and reply to emails from here, but the interface just dumps into the mail folder. Of course, everything is unpopulated because I can't fetch mail at the moment. So not an entire deal breaker, but so I already briefly showed you Iconomatic. We also have a built-in TV tuner. If you don't have a tuner card, it just displays color bars and you can't really do anything else with it. CodyCam, I can't really test right now. I couldn't get my Logitech camera to work with it. Basic settings, it mentions saving as images here, but I assumed it could take video. Maybe it saves as image slideshows, and then it's got FTP, SFTP, and local output location support. So there's that. The desk calculator, nothing to write home about. Haiku has two different built-in text editors. The basic one is called Style Edit. I think it's partially for editing cascading style sheets and partially for editing general text and whatnot. It lets you change things like fonts, color, size, and also we have PE for Performance Editor, which was included in BeOS, and this is kind of like a early or would-be integrated development environment. It's got extensions like bbook fetch, be happy. Looks like it's mostly stuff for web, and I doubt the Haiku developers use this. I couldn't see myself even developing for the web with this, but it's here nonetheless. And then also on the development front, we have PKGMAN, the built-in Haiku HTTP server. And just to test it out, I transferred over one of my old web design projects, and technically it loads it, but there's supposed to be a banner image, a background image, and this was supposed to be an image slideshow. I had PHP built into the contact page, and there's no modules that I know of for PKGMAN. Not extremely useful. Web Positive is Haiku's very own browser. It's got basic settings, not too much, not really lacking in anything. They pack it full of bookmarks, so all the documentation, welcome, user guide, quick tour, Haiku user, the bug tracker, community links, forums, list of software sites, Haiku ports, and Haiku archives. And they have a modern version of WebKit, which is the same thing that Apple Safari uses. and I'm logged into Dropbox right now, and everything's working pretty well. Let's try gmail.com. And yeah, so Gmail works. You can't log into Gmail with the Mail app, but you can through the browser, so that's pretty awesome. Unfortunately, that leads to YouTube. Now, obviously, YouTube is very important to me, and your browser cannot play this video. And I had a workaround for that. You go into Haiku Depot and download QM 2. Do a search for my channel and unable to extract uploader ID. Please report this issue on YT-DLP. This is a real bummer because this was working when I was testing in preparation for this video, and now it's not. There are two other web browsers, GNOME Web or Epiphany browser, and Otter. And even though they both work, they don't work well. In fact, they'll sometimes bring the entire system to a crawl. Scrubbing is terrible, and the Otter browser only has a 360p resolution. As far as the problem with QM 2, I looked into that. It's apparently a change that YouTube made very recently, and not even everyone experiences it because it's like an A/B testing situation. There are people working on it, and it might be fixed. Seeing as how YouTube is important, it's kind of a deal breaker. So we also have the Vision IRC client, and for all of you youngins who don't remember IRC, well, Linux users probably kind of familiar with IRC, but it was the internet relay chat, and it's still kind of going strong. And this isn't the most advanced client, but it defaults to the Haiku chat room, and we've got 281 users in the chat for Haiku. Here are all the channels. But yeah, here, this is the setup. Let's see. Set up like a multitasking example here. Let's pretend the email client works. And yeah, we could be on here talking to other devs, adding contact information, shooting off emails. Got our development file open here. I mean, it's not a bad setup, is all I'm saying. Or maybe if it's the 90s and if my webcam worked, got the chat room open, you're talking to a girl, ASL, taking some pics, sending some pics, kissy faces. Come on, you guys know what I'm talking about. We of course have the media player, and we also have a media converter. And the media converter has kind of a lot of options. I tried testing it out. I let it run a long time, and it output a file, but the file was
Almost there.
I don't know if you can see, but there's a bunch of like
the roof
frame stuttering going on in this.
I'm not as fearless as you think. Oh, please. Like, I could never do the surgery stuff you do.
It never seemed like it finished, yet there is a whole bunch of video there. I probably should give it another test, but I'm glad that they included it. The MIDI player, the system actually has a built-in sound font file, but if you try and drag it, it says could not load song. Despite that, if you switch it to live input, which I have a MIDI keyboard device attached here, it does work. Has all these different reverb sounds. And it shows a scope as well. But there's like a clipping and sound, and there's also some latency because of running it as a VM. So if I was running it on actual hardware, we wouldn't have that problem. Also, it kind of comes and goes. And here we have the sound recorder, and I've patched recording that I'm doing right now into it, and it is recording right now. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the Haiku sound recorder, and it is recording right now. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is the Haiku sound recorder. The way that I know it's actually a VM issue is because I've actually transferred an audio file that I recorded out of the VM and listened to it, and the playback played back fine. Okay, so now to have some real fun, I've brought over a whole bunch of my sound fonts and tested them out. I've got a nice synth going here. And now we are going to try out this Cortex demo. We've got the soft synth, which is the MIDI player, the sound recorder. We also have all of these add-ons. First off, I guess we'll do the video thing. We connect the producer to the consumer and start. And you get a bunch of colors, red, green, and blue, and this block. But what's interesting is this is kind of like Pipewire in that it shows video and audio streaming. Playing a video means you end up with a media player, producer, and a consumer, and also a media audio going to the audio mixer and out to the hardware. What we're really interested in here is playing around with some of these effects. I'm going to disconnect the synth, connect it to the flanger, and we're going to run the HD audio out to the sound recorder. We have to start her up. There we go. Alright, and let's see if we can also record. Switch it up. Let's try some drums. Alright, I'm going to run the drums into the flanger. I'm already pretty bad at drumming on a controller, but add the latency into the mix and it's like out of the question. I can't drum in real life either. The only thing I missed was this audio producer, and this is kind of cool. But yeah, there you go. There is the Cortex demo. And remember, this is mostly for developers so that they can get a feel for how to do things. And there are working music software that exists for Haiku as well. This is just a part of the base system. So also I should mention the many configuration dialogues there are under preferences. If you open up the network preferences, we've got DNS, FTP server, hostname, SSH server, telnet server, full printer preferences, pretty robust input preferences, including for USB tablet. We can always add extra repositories. There are notifications. There's even configurable sounds. None of them are set, but there's a ton of sound options that you can set. Virtual memory is for your swap, and as long as you've got it on automatic, I've scaled it up with the virtual machine. I've had 2 gigs, had to move it up to 4, but it automatically adjusts. But it feels like a full working OS with tons of little touches that I appreciate. such as when you're in the screen preferences dialog, the little screen here that changes with the resolution. But what I really like is when you click that, it automatically opens up the backgrounds so that you can, I think that that's awesome little touches. Also, if we go into the Haiku Depot, the package Haiku Extras, it actually gives us extra theme support. Open the appearance, go over to look and feel. We have 2 extra decorators. There's flat, and that changes the appearance of the window title tabs, gives them the flat look instead of the gradient look. There's also B, but yeah, I prefer the flat look for sure. And you can even go beyond that and install Theme Manager, and it gives you a whole bunch of these themes. Some of them are okay, but even if you don't like any of the themes, what it does let you do is save your own theme. It comes preloaded with themes you can use as a starting point, but you have to do it from Haiku's appearance dialog. Just go over to colors and you just set these individually. There's also no shortage of apps available that are ported from Linux, including a bunch that I regularly use, such as LMMS or Linux Multimedia Studio. Inkscape, GIMP, even video editors, OpenShot, which I've had nothing but bad luck with on Linux, but who knows, could work well for Haiku. Wonderbrush, an SVG editor specifically for Haiku. Sequitur, a digital audio workstation, originally from BeOS, and it has a 4.5 star rating in the Haiku Depot. There's even B Screen Capture. It's got a 4.4 rating. And I had originally planned to test all this stuff out and do all kinds of media work and document that, but this video is already far too long. I think I might have to do a part 2 if I'm gonna do that. So let me know if you'd be interested in seeing a video about making media and content using Haiku. So anyway, that's Haiku R4 Beta. I was really impressed with the entire thing. I did encounter a few software crashes and even the VM freezing entirely, but not enough to stop me from enjoying it. As I mentioned, I had planned to do a more extensive demonstration about the performance of Inkscape or making music, even editing video with it, but I just ended up having way too much, and I'll probably do that follow-up video. Obviously, my major criticism is going to be the inability to playback YouTube, but that's an issue they'll probably get fixed. It's an incredibly impressive system given the small size of the project. Another small complaint I have, when adjusting colors with their built-in, it's like a 4-range slider, they really should have a color picker so that you don't have to mix the colors manually. But I absolutely would recommend trying Haiku. There's definitely plenty of people running it on actual hardware. Drivers could be a bit of a concern, so you definitely want to check into hardware availability. Was particularly impressed with the built-in support for audio and video. Tons of just little touches make the project seem very complete. Kind of reminds me of Elementary OS. But anyways, would love to hear your thoughts. Once again, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, I'll see you in the next one. Peace.